Hello there, everyone, and welcome to the 10.2 Protection Warrior Guide. We're going to be going over talents for both Mythic Plus and Raid. We're going to be going over flex options and what you can do to customize your build for the type of game that you are playing. We're going to go over embellishments, stats, tier set, and all that fun stuff. But because of a lot of our talents and some of the flex points that I'm going to be talking about and possible changes, rely heavily on the tier set, we are going to start with that one first. And if we look here, the 2-piece Spending Rage has a chance to cause your next Shield Slam to consume your bleeds on a target, instantly dealing 40% of the damage of the remaining damage of your Deep Wounds and Rend, and 100% of Thunderous Roar's damage, reducing the damage taken to you for 5 seconds. Now, this is a buff applied to you and not a debuff applied to the mob like it was originally created. They did change that, and that is a very big bonus. The 4-piece, for each bleed consumed from an additional target, your damage taken is reduced by an additional 2%, and when Shield Slam consumes a bleed, the cooldown of Thunderclap is reset, and the cooldown of Thunderous Roar is reduced by 3 seconds. Now, this is an incredibly fun and powerful tier set. Basically, we're going to get a 14% damage reduction, occasionally being 16% damage reduction, because you should always have Rend and Deep Wounds on your target. But this also means that we're going to be increasing the APM for Prot Warrior, the action per minute, because we're going to be resetting Thunderclap a lot. When you're going to play with this tier set, you're going to notice it resets a lot. So one of the things rotationally that you're going to have to know and track is the bleeds that you have on your current target. Make sure Rend and Deep Wound is on. Rend is applied by Thunderclapping. And the moment, so you hit Shield Slam, bleeds are gone, you need to be tracking that, you immediately hit Thunderclap again to reapply those bleeds so you can keep the cycle going. But basically, we're getting a stronger defensively, and we're getting stronger offensively as well, and there's some talents that we can choose to kind of make that work out. So as we go into the talent section here, we're going to be starting with a Mythic Plus. Now, this has kind of become the new Mythic Plus default build. Now, Sidearm does do some additional damage. I've never really liked this ability, though, but if this is where you want to go, you can absolutely go with that. I actually prefer Concussive Blows. Now, that is for 2 reasons. I pug a lot, and my kick is basically on cooldown, and I can absolutely feel that 1 second the 1 second reduced cooldown on that kick. And there are and for some odd reason, there's a lot of mechanics where you can't solo kick without that extra second. Don't know what it is, but it's just what it is. You're going to be able to kick more often and more frequently, but if you are one of those tanks that's still learning and you don't kick as often as you should, definitely go with Sidearm until you feel like you need it, and this gives you a nice priority damage amp of 5% for 10 seconds on whatever target you are kicking. So it gives you a nice little bonus. This is better in pugs than it is in organized scenarios. Straight up, I will promise you that. Another one that you will see here is I have taken off Rally. Now, Rally, in my opinion, was a mid cooldown at best last season for Mythic Plus. Definitely, absolutely, insanely great in Raid. Not that great in Mythic Plus. And now it's been nerfed, so that is really not that fun. So that's like a thing. It's really not that great. It gives people 10% maximum health and 10% temporary health as well. Before, it used to be more than that, and the node, by the way, Inspiring Presence, to make that stronger is gone. This is definitely a raid nerf, but it did not get the Demon Hunter treatment where it's stronger in Mythic Plus, and Blizzard, you should really, really correct that. One of the weaknesses that Protection Warrior or Warriors just have in general is a lack of utility in Mythic Plus. This was one of our only buttons, and you're stripping it away. It's still useful, and if you want to use it, you absolutely can. But I am a big fan of Intervene. I've always been a big fan of Intervene, and I use it a lot, and I use it frequently. I use it for movement to get out of stuff. I use it to help my melee not take damage. And if you are a fan of Intervene and you do press this button a lot, you're probably going to make a lot more use out of Intervene than Rally. But that is a personal preference, and you can choose which one you want to do. Like I said, in Mythic Plus, this really just got soured a lot for me. Yeah. Another thing that you can do is if you feel safe in the lower keys, once you start getting up to 23, 24s, Pain and Gain just sees a stupid amount of great value. But in lower keys, if you're still feeling powerful in the lower keys, you can opt for something like Honed Reflexes, which will reduce the cooldown of Pummel even more. And trust me, you will notice. You can also go with Bitter Immunity, give yourself a removal. There is a lot of removals that are really good to have, so this is something that you may want to opt into as well. Bounding Stride is another one. This is an ability that I absolutely love, but is starting to get harder and harder to take, just due to the amount of kick and stop requirements that they are, where I have to start going towards Intimidating Shout. That's just kind of what it is. Now, one of the things that in the class tree that I was testing on the PTR and really enjoyed is I actually got away from Unstoppable Force and put it into Uproar to reduce the cooldown of Thunderous Roar by 30 seconds. Now, this gave you Thunderous Roar so often with the new tier set, because remember, each time that you gut a bleed, let's just call it a gutting, you reduce the cooldown of Thunderous Roar by 3 seconds. Now, on a 1 minute cooldown, you can reduce this very, very frequently and a lot. And when you are paying attention to the tier, and when you are paying good attention to when Shield Slam is that proc of gutting the bleeds, you can make an insane amount of use out of this and just get stupid amounts of damage. But let's remember Blood Surge. The more bleed ticks that you have on a target, the more rage that you have a chance to be granted. So being able to cast more Thunderous Roar is going to give you more rage. So it's going to allow you to do more revenges, keep up your ignore pains a lot easier, and your shield blocks, and all of that fun stuff. So this is something that you might want to opt into once you get your 4-piece. I know I'm going to be testing this heavily on live when we get to it. Another thing is Spell Block. When Spell Block is OP, it is when Spell Block is good, it's overpowered. And this is one of those things where you should absolutely be aware of what dungeons it's great in and what dungeons it's only okay in. And that is going to matter based on what dungeon specifically it is, but also what key level you are doing. Now, there is a seasonal, like an expansion-wide document that SE does, Sense. Him and his community take care of this, and they post everything that's shield blockable, spell reflectable, shield spell blockable, the whole thing. And it is an absolute godsend to the Protware community, so go show them some support. I'll leave the link for that document there down there. It's also in my UI document, Patreon document down below as well. But this is a flex point. Now, for example, this was basically useless in Freehold last season, right? But in Neltharis, it was amazing. So this is an exact example of what a great flex point would be. If you're having trouble keeping shield block up, especially while you are in the learning stages, if you're in the learning stages, you're probably not in cutting edge keys, you can go for Bolster, which will give you 15 seconds of shield block whenever you need it. And on a 2-minute cooldown, it's really, really strong, and it's going to help you keep your shield block uptime up and very, very strong. And with the new tier set, we are fishing for shield block resets, because it's one thing, shield slam resets, sorry. Because it's one thing for your next shield slam to be able to gut the bleeds out, but if you aren't fishing for those shield slam resets, it can take some time for it to work. And the more resets you get, the more chances that your next one is a proc, so you can keep that going. This is where things like Batarang Ram come into play and is a very, very important into this, and obviously Strategist. So that way your Devastate, so your Auto Attack, your Thunderclap, your Revenge, and your Execute all have a 30% chance to reduce the remaining cooldown on Shield Slam, and Battering Ram increases your Auto Attack. So these are all things that you're going to be needing to be aware of and how to work it out. Now, in an extreme scenario where you're in a group and you do not have enough interrupts, you can opt out of Punish. I wouldn't suggest this, but you can, and go for Disrupting Shout. Thunderlord is incredibly strong right now, especially because they rebuffed it. 4.5 seconds as long as you are hitting 3 mobs with Thunderclap, which gets reset all of the time, by the way, is really, really good. And you're going to get so many more demo shots with this new tier set and how it operates. So really, really good, really strong. And those are some of the flex point options that we have to talk about there. This has already been going on for 10 minutes. I talk way too much about Protection Warrior. Up next, we are going to talk about Raid. Raid, this is a very simple build. You're going to be wanting to go for sudden death and increasing your bleed damage in general with putting a point into Bloodborne. Obviously, we're getting points out of Shockwave, and you're going on with Uproar and Unstoppable Force, which was a discussion that we had to have before. Rally is an absolute must for Raid. It's blankets the whole party really, really strong. And in this Raid, there are quite a few things that are spell blockable that are just going to make life much simpler for Protection Warriors and just allowing you to live a lot easier. So this is the basic build for Raid. Remember, this is more single target based. Yeah, the more targets you have, the more and more you're going to want to lean into some AoE talents. Aside from that, you're more than fine. In pure single target scenarios, Thunderlord just does not perform. You really need that 3 target count. And that's where you're going to find it mostly in Mythic Plus, right? On a single target encounter in a raid, 1.5 second off demo shout just isn't quite strong enough for what we need it to do. Now, up next, we got to talk Trinkets. There are a few new Trinkets from the raid that are really, really strong. Offhand finger Trinkets. And we're going to go with all specs here. So the 2 big Trinkets that come from the raid, and this is a choice you're going to have to make on whether or not you want to loot spec for damage or you want to loot spec for damage or loot spec for protection, for tank. Now, there is a one-handed axe that drops from the raid. It is Critical Strike Mastery. It has a Shadow Flame proc. This is fairly strong, so if you are after the DPS trinket, I would actually suggest going Fury, so you have a better chance of getting both the axe and the trinket. Now, as we go talk towards the trinket itself, bam, that is the Augury of Primal Flame. This is a critical strike instead of main stat trinket that just deals an absolute boatload of damage, is incredibly strong and just passive. Doesn't require anything from you, just deals insanely good damage. Great value. Now, out of the tank side, we have the Firax Tainted Rageheart. This is a versatility instead of a prime stat trinket, which deals damage to enemies, nowhere near as much as Augury, but on use, giving you a big absorb shield. Now, this is set to Mythic right here, and as you can see here, a 660k absorb shield on Mythic is incredibly strong. So these are the 2 options that you are going to have to choose on which ones you want and how you want to play. My personal thing is I would probably going with the Augury of the Primal Flame and opting for the Prophetic Stone Scales. Because now, this just, a cheap death is just incredibly nice. Plain and simple, let's just call it what it is. It's a big heal, and it gives you just like a boatload of haste. Nothing bad about it, and having that cheap death is just a nice safety blanket, especially because a lot of the other trinkets are kind of meh. Like, they're all good, but none of them are, like, there's not a whole lot that are standing out this season. And this is when I've been kind of looking at the research. It's been kind of weak for trinkets and how they are performing. A lot of them are performing well, but there's, you know, how we always love to see those outstanding ones. There are very, very few ones, and the 2 come from Firax from the raid, which are the ones that you are going to be wanting to try and aim for as fast as possible. As for stats for Protection Warrior, we are still absolutely in love with haste. Try to get it as much as possible, and in raid, you are very versatility focused. In Mythic Plus, we ended up playing a lot more Critical Strike than what I had been previously used to playing in, you know, Shadowlands and all that fun stuff, because we are starting to get an absolute crazy amount of secondaries. Straight up. We're getting a lot of them. So you're going to be hitting cap pretty easily, and you're going to be able to focus on where you want. So I would be opting for haste versatility at the start, and then towards the end of the season, start gearing a little bit more towards crit if you're more Mythic Plus focused, and kind of while trying to keep your versatility at a nice, comfortable level for you, because parry has been incredibly important. And in Season 2, so just last season, crit was absolutely huge in all of these dungeons because the amount of things that you could parry, just the sheer amount of things that you could parry were great. So between shield block and the amount of parry that you had, that's how you felt like an absolute monster on the battlefield, where you just never took damage because you either blocked it, you spell reflected it, or you spell blocked it, or you parried it. You had so many layers of defenses to not take damage, which is just incredibly strong. So that is what I would suggest there. Embellishments, this is kind of a weak point right now in the season. They nerfed a bunch of them, so a lot of them aren't feeling that great. And as it so stands, the rolling Shadow Flame patch is seemingly going really, really well for Warrior. There is a new embellishment helm that I think Prot Warrior with Intervene could actually make a lot of really good use out of, but my initial testing was buggy as all crap. So, we're gonna craft it. When I have the extra, not Shadow Flame, but the new Sparks, right? The Spark of Splintering, Spark of Dreams. When I have an extra Spark of Dreams that I don't necessarily need to use, I'm gonna give it a go. I'm gonna give that helm a go, and we're gonna give it a good test. So stay tuned to this channel, subscribe if you want to see more like that. We're going to be focusing incredibly heavily on all the tanks this season. Now, that's pretty much every season, right? I focus heavily on the tanks. But this season, we ended up playing 10 or 11 different classes, in Mythic Plus, to a point where, like, a lot of them were 2,500. So, this season, I'm going to focus on something a little bit different. And that is, I'm literally just going to go tanks. I'm going to do more tank stuff update. But this video is already getting to be quite a bit long. And if you've watched any of my Protection Warrior videos before, I can go on forever about the spec itself. So Protection Warrior is looking incredibly strong this season. Have fun. Literally play with your builds. Learn what you need to do. And trust me, you're going to have you're just going to have a blast. Have yourself a good one, everyone. Happy tanking. Bye.